in all honesty, it may be time for Paul George to return back home. When I mean home, I mean the Eastern Conference. When you look at the all-time choke job between the Los Angeles Clippers with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, I just don't see them coming back from that. And we know Paul George is an excellent player, a three-level scorer, two-way player that can top 3 to 5 perimeter defender in the game. He's elite. He's a top 10 to 15 player in the game. Sometimes even looks like a top 5 player if he has everything going, as we saw his MVP caliber season with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The issue with Paul George is after they lost that terrible series when they were up three third quarters in a row, and then the lose in the fashion that they lost in. After the series was over, Paul George basically came out and said that in this locker room, we really didn't feel like this was a championship or bust caliber of season. And that right there kind of let me know everything I needed to know about what the Los Angeles Clippers needs to do going forward, because I just don't see them bouncing back from this type of collapse. It's certain things that happen when it comes to, like, in the playoffs, when it comes to certain teams that you just don't recover from. I'm afraid to tell you that I just don't see the Los Angeles Clippers really recovering from this unless they go in a different direction. And that direction is probably going to have to be trading Paul George. When I say trading Paul George, people are going to say, like, why wouldn't you try to get rid of Lou Williams and Shaman and other those players? Those players probably be included in a trade package, but they're not probably going to fix you the type of draft pick or compensation that you're going to want back to get from your team, for Paul George. So when it comes down to it, I feel that Paul George is as excellent of a player he is. He may be better in a team situation where he can be the number one option and the best player on your team, but still have a team built around him with less pressure and expectations. Going to the West, playing Russell Westbrook, it was a lot of expectations. They came up short. Going to play with the Los Angeles Clippers and Kawhi Leonard, it was a lot of expectations, and they came up short. I don't think Paul George is the type of player that can be on a championship caliber team with expectations of, especially going to the finals and you got to win the finals. I just don't think he can be on that type of team. I think he works best in a situation similar to Jimmy Butler in the Miami Heat, where Jimmy Butler's the best player on the team. They built around Jimmy Butler and his strengths to have a whole lot of players that are cut from the same cloth as him. I think that also similar to Paul George when he was with the Indiana Pacers, that's the perfect team and the perfect situation fit for Paul George. I think that's the caliber of team that he needs to be on, where he can be the best player and they can build around him and have a bunch of guys that are good and solid, where the expectation is not going to be as high as it is for a Los Angeles Lakers or Golden State Warriors or Los Angeles Clippers like we saw this season with him on that team with Kawhi Leonard. I don't think he's fit for that type of pressure. And now, speaking of the Indiana Pacers, the Paul George that we seen, the last time we seen a great playoff Paul George was when he played with the Indiana Pacers. And if I'm the Los Angeles Clippers, to be honest, this may be a little embarrassing, but you may want to consider shipping Paul George back to the Indiana Pacers. If you can get Miles Turner, a rim protector, a stretch big, which you lacked in this postseason, then you can get Victor Oladipo, who's going to have a kind of like a all or nothing type of situation, because he's eager to try to show people that he can still be that former Victor Oladipo himself before he got hurt with the Indiana Pacers in that terrible injury. So he's going to be out to showcase his talent potential. And then you get TJ McConnell, a playmaking guard that can come off the bench and can set up other teammates as well. And you trade Lou Williams, you trade Paul George to the Indiana Pacers. And then Paul George gets to be back in that same situation that he was in with the Indiana Pacers of old. And then if you're the Pacers, you got Malcolm Brogdon at the 1, Paul George at the 2, TJ Warren at the 3, Sabonis at the 4, and then they have their 2019 first round, 19th overall draft pick, Goga Bizdat, that they can slide into the center position and let him be their starting center. Or you can try to get him to go to and trade him to maybe the Orlando Magic. You get Aaron Gordon back, you get Nikola Vucevic back, all-around center, which the Los Angeles Clippers need. He can score, 20 and 10 guy, can score in a variety of ways. You get Aaron Gordon, a guy who has a lot of potential, and then you ship off Lou Williams and you ship off Paul George down to the Orlando Magic, and they can build a team around Paul George as well. I just feel that it will be beneficial for both parties if they separated Paul George away from Kawhi Leonard because of the expectations of the Los Angeles Clippers. And then also because I don't think that pressure-wise, Paul George is going to be able to handle that pressure of those expectations that comes with playing with it, Kawhi Leonard. To be honest, when we talk about pressure, they were talking about they didn't believe it was pressure this season, a championship or bust type of situation. If you keep Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, what the hell are they going to feel this year with a healthy Golden State roster, with the Los Angeles Lakers still going to be intact, and they're probably going to reboost their roster as well. Then you got the Denver Nuggets, who don't fear you guys. They're going to, if they play you guys in the second round, play you guys again, they're going to feel like they can beat you because they already have done it before. It's going to be even more difficult. And then you're going into a contract situation where Kawhi Leonard can opt out, Paul George can opt out. If you go into this win or bust type of situation with that type of pressure of player options, and then you don't get nothing in return for Paul George if he decides to walk, or if Kawhi Leonard decides to walk, that's real pressure. And that's why I think the Los Angeles Clippers are going to have to probably do something, and probably, unfortunately, have to break up the duo of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And it's going to benefit Paul George and would benefit Kawhi and the Los Angeles Clippers if they do that.